What's up, everybody? What's up? This is me, Lewis, Red Pill Sleeper Cell. I got a very special guest, a longtime friend, someone I consider my brother from Newark, New Jersey, fellow Blue Bear, Ali McBride. What's going on, Ali?
Same old Lou. How's everything, man? And congratulations on uh having a platform, because when I was doing this, there was no platform. We were being innovators and we did it, and it was an internet radio station and we didn't even have a visual. And later on started having Facebook Live, and then it developed into podcasting, and I stepped out, but man, I'm glad that you're continuing on with the tradition of sharing information with folk. And it's a good look, man. It's a good look. I like it. I like it.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. What's so sad though? It's like the the information that we had. If we had this platform back then, you could be amazed how much change and difference that could have been made. I mean, think about it. The past three presidential elections were directly affected by social media. People nowadays, what the term is, um, fake news, mainstream media. Most people
Right.
don't even get information from that. They YouTube, TikTok, whatever, and it is a lot of people are now probably with the younger generations. They're more influenced through that than watching news like how we used to. Like the
Oh,
age of Walter Cronkite is dead.
oh,
So
no doubt about it. I mean, Walter Cronkite was like dead during our generation. We had our Ted Koppels. We
yeah,
had, ABC Nightly News. That was our medium. And the reality is that as technology has evolved, the way we received our information has also evolved. The only problem though is that now people bank on misinformation. On whoever side. The fact that we're not being 100% honest about the information that we receive, and so that can be that can be troublesome, and we're starting to see that currently with some of the misinformation that we get about what's going on internationally. We can go beyond national. The national way of seeing things. We're talking about international. It's some things that are happening in the news right now currently. I mean, it just happened like day before yesterday that we're going to probably wind up going into today, and it just says something about the fact that people are not dedicated to getting out um, accurate information. And it's pretty sad. It's pretty
I,
sad.
I totally agree. I know that you are pressed for time. I'm going to read your bio that you sent to me for my listeners. They should be coming in soon. Um, Lee McBride is from the West Ward of Newark, New Jersey. He graduated from Johnson C. Smith University in Charlotte, North Carolina, and is a long-standing member of the Newark-based organization Afrikan Echoes. Ali received his master's in administrative science with a concentration on international studies and global research from Fairleigh Dickinson University, with mandatory semesters at the University of Mendoza and Wroxton College in England, while simultaneously serving as a senior investigator with the Special Investigation Division of the New Jersey Department of Corrections, and for 10 years as a task force officer with the U.S. Marshals Fugitive Task Force. He is now chair of the Civil Engagement Committee with the Newark Branch of the NAACP and serves as a commissioner with the Newark Civilian Complaint Review Board. Ali also graduated with a bachelor's in English from Johnson C. Smith University. Um, Something that is more important to me is that you're my friend, and more so, I consider you my brother. And
No doubt.
there are some things I'm not going to talk about. What's up, Jibba Jabber? That I'm not going to talk about what you did for me, but the one thing that I will mention is that you brought me into Afrikan Echoes,
No
and
doubt.
you brought me into that organization, and I got to meet a lot of remarkable men and women. Some of them are not here today, they're with the ancestors, but that is
Absolutely.
something that is a debt that I couldn't repay. And this man right here on the panel has probably forgotten more than I would probably ever know. This is a long time in the making. We've been talking about this for a couple of months coming up here.
Yeah.
Um, Ali McBride of Digital Diaspora, my airwaves are yours. Take us wherever you want to go with it, my brother.
Well, I'll say first and foremost, that was an incredible introduction. And for the most part, man, for whatever reason, that most of us, we survived, man. We survived coming up where we came up. And it's a blessing, to add information to what we're talking about. There was a young man by the name of Keith. I never knew Keith's last name. Keith was from 8th Street. And believe it or not, Keith was in his 20th year of being incarcerated. And um, he just got a what does the president do? They give you a
Pardon,
pardon. He
pardon
was
them.
just pardoned by Biden, and that's not to give any accolades or anything to the president, although some accolades are actually uh, deserved. But I say that to say that those are the narrow straits that we come up in. The fact that we have so many of our friends that have done, in a lot, an allotment of time in the prison industrial complex, and some that are still serving time, some that are in their 25th, 30th year, some that have come home after doing 30 years. And the fact that we came out all right on the other side is a blessing. But it also says something about the system that we currently live in and that we live under. And I think that the fact that we're here and the fact that, I was able to share, because you weren't the only person that I shared, Afrikan Echoes with. I shared it with some other folks that are, believe it or not, they're not here anymore. Um, some are battling demons currently. And there's just something about the system that we currently exist in right now that speaks volumes about the inequities in society. But it is a blessing to actually be here right now and to be able to talk about the things that affect our world, that affect us, and that will ultimately affect the future.
Uh,
So I just wanted to kind of put that in there.
yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. Like we had the other day at my job, I saw a gentleman with a hat. It said veteran on the war on drugs. And we talk about the war on crime, the war on drugs. Where we come from in Newark, where when I came up, right after the race riots, the end of the heroin epidemic, then you had the crack bomb and the AIDS bomb. But a lot of people don't talk about, which affect us, is that we are POWs of poverty in our
Wow.
society.
Yeah. Yeah, we are.
And
And
people are still being affected by that.
no doubt about it. It's funny you say that because, and you hear this sometimes when you hear celebrities and athletes on television being interviewed. Well, not all of them, of course, because a lot of them don't have an understanding of this issue that we're talking about right now in its totality. But you get some that kind of get it, and they'll say that they never knew that they were poor, quote unquote, whatever poor means, right? They didn't know or they didn't understand that because when we came up, it was more of a community, and it was more of everyone from one block corner to the next caring about everyone else's child in that community. So it was just a little different, man. I don't think that there's the same warmth and love and caring that we had when we came up. So it's a blessing. And then you know what? Again, maybe will understand that we got to get back to that, and that nobody will help us get back to that. It's going to literally be up to us. And a lot of that will come from information. And that's what we're here for right now, to talk about information, to talk about things that we need to do, to be anti-illiterate. Not illiterate, but anti-illiterate. Illiterate means that you can read, but you refuse to do so. And so we have to start creating these lanes that will make us a lot smarter than we were yesterday.
For sure. I mean, after when AIDS and crack hit, that's what decimated a lot of the village concept in our communities. Jibber Jabber said deindustrialization added to our demise as well. I grew up in the 70s and 80s, so as both me and Ali. And with today being MLK Day and Inauguration Day, did you watch any of the Don
you know
Cheadle
what?
speech?
I'll say this about you said Don Cheadle. He spoke at the
No, Don Cheeto, Donald Trump, Cheeto, orange like Cheetos.
Nah, I haven't. But you know, I'll say this because people. I'm gonna tell you what Bob, and I get it, right, and I respect it. You know, a lot of people said that they weren't going to watch and protest, right? But my thing is this though: those that took that position, right? Those that took the position that they were boycotting watching it, right? That outside of that, what else do they involve themselves in? You know what I mean? I believe it or not, I just had no desire to watch it. And it wasn't because of a protest. It wasn't because I was like, oh, I'm not watching that, you know, although he's not my favorite person. I mean, I'm a friend of Yusef Salaam.
Okay.
But even in that, like, I just didn't, it wasn't a desire, but my desire, of course, is to also, too, simultaneously keep up with what this current government, or those that have been voted into office to deal with this current government. I'm going to keep up with what's going on with them. I just wish that the passion that people have for today on January the 20th, during the inauguration of Donald Trump, that same passion still exists tomorrow and next week and March and the beginning of the summer and the end of the year and during the midterm elections, that same desire and that same interest is still at its height. Because at the end of the day, we need people that engage regularly. See, I engage regularly. So something like that, when I hear that, and mind you, I'm not adverse to it either. But what I'm saying is that people need to always be involved. People need to always understand or to know what is going on. Like, the reality is that Elon Musk throwing the Hitler sign at the inauguration, that's red meat for the base. Basically, it's red meat for the base. Is it disrespectful? Absolutely. But my thing is that when are we going to get to the point where some continuity regarding our interest in what's happening currently is a regular thing for us? And I think that's a great segue into the topic of discussion when we talk about China. I think it's a great segue, but you're the announcer, so I'm going to follow your lead.
Yeah, more so like to build on what you said. Right now, it's more important that we focus on our local and state elections. But you talked about, you mentioned China. Like I said, this airwaves is yours. This is digital diaspora.
Okay.
Take us where you want to go, brother.
Okay. So I'll say this. I think I'm going to take us back a little bit.
Sure.
Back into time.
Right. Hip hop reference.
Yeah, exactly. And yo, I'm telling you, it's a segue. We're going back into time. During the time when Dapper Dan used to make knockoff Gucci jackets, knockoff designer jackets, and it was all the rage, and he was charging them nice buck for them. And we went into it, and they weren't actually knockoffs. They were just really his original designs. Dapper Dan would take those logos that people worshipped, you know, Gucci, Louis Vuitton. He would take those logos and he would create an entire new universe. And then the Chinese came in. And when the Chinese came in, they didn't actually do something new. They just really recreated what Dapper Dan had already done. So now you got knockoffs of a knockoff. And the original knockoff wasn't necessarily a knockoff. And I'll never forget, I had a friend named Dave Bergman. And Dave Bergman got one of those jackets, got one of the Dapper Dan Gucci jackets, and he went into a store. And when he went to this Chinese store downtown Newark on Broad Street, the individual, one of the Chinese men in the establishment, started taking pictures of Wu's jacket. And Wu said, yo, what you doing? Right? And so, you know, he didn't think anything of it. So a few weeks later, they go back to the store, and the Chinese workers in the store winded up having a whole bunch of Dapper Dan jackets just based on Tall Wu's jacket, right? So that wasn't necessarily innovation, right? It wasn't necessarily innovation. However, it was some talent. They were able to reproduce something that had already been produced. And for
our artistic interpretation.
No, that's exactly. Absolutely. And the reality is that it really wasn't an interpretation. It was literally a copy. It was a straight copy, right? And so I say that to say that China has come a long way based on that childhood example. And what I mean by that, let's just go back a little bit. So about maybe 8 years ago, and it was actually about 8 years ago, Lou, believe it or not, when I mentioned a book to you called When China Will Rule the World.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
By a man named Martin Jacques. And the book just talked about where China was at the time, the fact that China was making a whole lot of moves, and that China was also deemed a civilization state, according to Martin Jacques. Civilization state meaning that they had a communist system, something based on communism for a long time. That's what their civilization was built on, and that almost between 92 and 97% of the Chinese believed that they came from one tribe called the Han Chinese. The Han Chinese. And so Martin Jacques was a British journalist who was a writer a long time ago. He himself had actually belonged to the Communist Party in Britain pretty much right after the war. And both of his parents were blue-collar workers. They used to work at an airplane plant right after the war, and then they both became educators. And Jacques is a graduate of Manchester University. Very, very prolific writer, very popular writer in Britain. And he was also he also studied at Cambridge and got his PhD there. And his PhD was on the emergence of responsible trade unionism. So he was a union guy, really big on the union, right? Absolutely. So I think your man Jibba Jabba said the African Americans sets the culture of the world. Absolutely, they do. You won't get any arguments and no lies detected here. So Martin Jacques was the editor of a magazine in Britain called Marxism Today, and during that era, it was a golden era, increasing the number of readerships despite the number of communists declaring those declared as communists. And so in the early 90s is when Martin Jacques focused on developing a think tank. Now, you know, think tanks are the thing now. Everybody doing the think tank thing. As a matter of fact, rumor has it that the Heritage Foundation will pretty much lead. Heritage Foundation, of course, is a think tank, just like the Federalist Society, is going to be leading this current administration. And so I think it should be noted that in 1993, Martin Jacques wrote an influential article that was featured in BBC called The Incredible Shrinking Politician. And he talked about how, and it's prescient, man, because That's what's happening in this country right now, because most politicians are brought, and they're not directly brought because you could still go to jail for that, but they're brought because they have those with certain interests that are able to pay to play,
Yeah,
i.e.
Dr. Claude
APAC.
Anderson spoke about that also.
Absolutely. Absolutely. APAC is a real thing. APAC, there's only 4 politicians in Washington, D.C. that have not taken public money. Literally. There's only 4, right? And moving forward on Martin Jacques, I want to give APAC, yep. I want to, move a little forward with Martin Jacques. And in 1996, he wrote a paper called The End of the Western World, right? The end of the rest of the world in 1996. So 1996 wasn't that far back, wasn't that close, but it wasn't that far back from where we are at currently. And in 1998, he wrote a paper called Proud to be Chinese, which was, of course, the precursor for When China Will Rule the World, which came out in 2009. And so the biggest mistake made about China is seeing the civilization state via the prism of the West. So we were looking at all of the innovations made in China through the prism of West, of the Western visual. And the reality is that,
a white lens.
Absolutely, a white lens. Where I'll give you a good example, right? So what China did, because you have Christians in China, you have Muslims in China, and we know what's going on over there currently with some of the Muslims. But what they have done is that they have convinced the Chinese that if they're going to be Christians, to give rid of the cross. You can still do your thing. You can still pledge your allegiance to Jesus, but just give rid of the cross and add a little more Chinese culture into what you do. And he did the same thing with the Muslims, telling them to get rid of the little domes. That you think of Islam, you think of Arabic countries. Do it in the visual of China, right? So they're allowing them to continue to practice, their religious point of view. I wouldn't say religious freedoms for the most part, but he allowed them to do certain things in the lens of China, as long as you're pressing Chinese, you're pressing Chinese culture and a Chinese way of life, right? So that's how they're able to get those who are there to buy into the large picture. And the large picture is that China is doing what they need to do. They're literally at the forefront of innovation. As a matter of fact, there is I just talked about this today. Where are we at? Where there's a think tank, another think tank called American Benchmarks. American Benchmarks is a think tank right here in the United States that has literally recently come out and said that China is the #1 innovator in the world when it comes to when it comes to technology. The #1 innovator. This is what they're saying. Now, we just talked about this earlier. Is our news hipping us to that? Is the news saying, listen, we need more people to go to school and become technologically savvy? We're not getting that. All we're getting is this argument between Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy talking about bringing people in, as opposed to getting our people, or getting the people that are citizens of this country to get involved in that, right? So they're willing to bring folk in, not realizing China's on the move. China's on the move when it comes to innovation. China's on the move when it comes to supercomputers, when it comes to artificial intelligence, when it comes to quantum computing, etc., etc., etc. So we see all of these things, taking place. And now fast forward to today, where they talked about getting rid of TikTok 1 minute, and then 12 hours later saying, oh, we're back on point. When for the most part, they switched their data saving information to Meta, which is owned, of course, by Mark Zuckerberg. So I'm saying all this to say that this is the precursor to what I was talking about earlier, where we just found out within the last 48 hours that Nigeria has become a part of BRICS. And about a week and a half ago, Cuba had also become a part of BRICS. And if my experiences in Cuba has any bearing on how I see this, that's a pretty big move. That's a pretty big deal, because Cuba has been able to survive for almost 50 years with this embargo placed on them by the United States, and they ain't but a few hours from us. Imagine if you look at some of the technology, some of the medical technology that Cuba has developed, being isolated right down the street from the United States. Imagine if they had the help of those countries that are part of the Brazil, Russian, India, Chinese, and South African alliance. Imagine
You
that.
know you know what's so interesting about Cuba is that when you had all the sanctions and they were not they didn't have the access to the technology, because the USSR was their primary supplier.
Yep, that's right.
And they were able to thrive and survive in this modern world. You could look at Cuba as the canary in the coal mine, how we always talk that African Americans are the canary in the coal mine for America.
Right.
Cuba is actually a high possibility what we might be at with
Brother,
this
let
world
me tell you.
stage changing.
Absolutely. Yo, check it. Let me tell you something. China developed a cure for lung cancer. I'm not making that up. Cuba literally were with all of the things that they were kept from when it comes to technology. They were able to develop a cure for lung cancer. 98% of the Cuban population are functionally literate. Not illiterate, they're functionally illiterate, which means the majority of the Cuban population can read and write. Whereas we just got a report here, right here specifically in New Jersey, where a large percentage, I won't even say the numbers, but a large percentage of the student population in grammar school can't even read or write. How does that happen? How does that happen when we got the embargo on Cuba? You would think that Cuba had the embargo on us. So it speaks volumes as to
And we have
where
more
our
advantages. We got
we
Google,
supposedly,
ChatGPT.
supposedly, how does that
Supposedly,
happen? Right.
we
Supposedly.
have access to a plethora of knowledge. Bookstores. We got you gotta is when you buy a phone right now today is a mandatory app, Amazon. So all you gotta do is
Absolutely.
set up your account and buy any book you want.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you know what? It's sad. I had a guy I used to work with when I worked law enforcement. He had failed the visual part of being hired with the agency. And so what he did was he went to Cuba and he had some corrective eye surgery, corrective eye laser surgery, came back and got a job. Just that simple. Just that simple. And again, they're able to do that because they don't get into the whole, oh well, we don't need that population of people taking advantage of any opportunities where they would be trained in order to do that. Right? Matter of fact, his name is Mercado. Mercado's a good dude, him and his brother. And he was literally able to go and get laser eye surgery to correct his vision. And so you have that currently going on there. You have this innovation, as reported by the think tank American Benchmark, this innovation coming from China. You have these alliances being made with the BRICS Alliance. There's a lot of things going on. And not only that, but China is in the process of utilizing soft power all throughout Africa currently. All throughout Africa currently. It happens because these elite just have no ambition. That is, you're absolutely right, and it's unfortunate, but that's intentional. Believe it or not, that's intentional, right? That's intentional, and what you're saying is correct. But we have to also consider the history, right? There has always been an agenda. Case in point, my father is from Henry County, Alabama. My mother's from Georgetown, South Carolina. My father, mind you, I'm not talking about my grandfather. I'm not talking about my great-grandfather. I'm talking about my father, was not allowed to receive the education in Henry County, Alabama. That's only one generation. I am the son. Okay, you should say correct. Intention, absolutely. As I thought you said it was intentional, but right. You just straight. I received that message. Well, I'll finish the point though. So I went to a genealogy conference in Harlem. It was at the Lutheran Church in Harlem, and it was the first time I had ever met Dr. I forget his name. Brilliant man. I hate that I can't remember his name. It might come to my mind when I think about it. But he was the one who actually was the moderator. And so this man walked by with this little brown envelope, and my cousin, who I brought with me, who was almost in her 80s, she looked at the envelope that the man was carrying, and she said, "Your father used to get paid with those types of envelopes." So the man heard us having this discussion. And so he came over to us. He said, "Your father got paid with this envelope?" I said, "Mary, is that what it is?" He was like, "Yeah." She said, "Yeah, that's the one." He says, "Oh, well, your father was a sharecropper. I'm in my 40s. It was the first time I had ever heard that information, that my father was a sharecropper. And my father, when he did migrate to the North and married my mother, he went and got his GED when he came up here. My mother, who was from Georgetown, she was able to get her high school diploma. She went to trade school, decided she didn't like the trade that she got into, and then she moved up north, and that's where she met my father. I say all that to say that with all the things that they were kept from learning and doing, and even the jobs that when my mother got up this way, they would try and sabotage her out of it. My mother was an EEG, EKG technician at the United Hospital, and they did everything that they could to not allow my mother to have training. And so, unfortunately, these are some of the things, and these are literally examples. These are current examples of what had happened with that generation that came here. The same generation that came during the Newark riots, right before the Newark riots, when Gibson became mayor, who was the first African American mayor of Newark. Remember, you got generations of people who have been able to take advantage of wealth, right? Up until that point. We're not even talking 50 years ago. My father died in 2007. So imagine all of that time. Imagine that time between enslavement, then you had Reconstruction. A little before Reconstruction, you had the Civil War. Then you had Reconstruction, but all during that time, in certain places, African Americans still weren't allowed to vote. And then it became official in 1965. So they fought to not make you whole all the way up to 1965. This system did. I'm listening.
Sorry to cut you off.
No, go ahead,
tell everybody, I'm the first one in my family technically born free. I was born in 75. If you think about it.
That's crazy. That's crazy. That's crazy, but it's a reality. And it's a reality all too familiar, to have to even go back. Like I went back maybe once. I went back to with my father, because my family, they moved around. So they didn't come directly from Henry County, Alabama. They moved around. They went to Georgia, they went to Florida, and then they actually made a pilgrimage to what they deemed as the promised land, going up north. And so these are some of the things that are a reality in our existence in this country. And so now we're engaging in politics, And a lot of people feel like, well, if it didn't come immediately, then it doesn't work. It's not that it doesn't work. It's just that we stop looking at the world through the vision or through the visuals of a farmer. See, a farmer, when he plants seeds, he knows that the seeds are not going to come next week. They're not going to come next month even. Hell, it might take a few months. Now, how long it takes for a watermelon to grow? So sometimes we have to look at the world through this lens that whatever we do, we need to do it. We need to plant those seeds. We need to consistently take care of that. So when we talk about the voting, when we talk about voting rights, and we talk about generational wealth and all of these things, it's not going to happen overnight. So someone who is not learned, someone who doesn't read, will winds up happening because they think that this thing is going to happen overnight. Or they're going to not take into consideration the roadblocks that are going to be intentionally put in front of you. You know, believe it or not, there's so much land in the South that some of our family members held on to, that this generation now, my age and your age, Lou, they refuse to go back because they're like, I'm not dealing with that. There's so much land that has been given away due to this generation not wanting to go back.
And you know what's so ironic about that? Like 10 years ago, in Newark, New Jersey, for example, there you won't even know it, but in buildings there's nothing but hydroponic farms.
Absolutely.
Especially throughout the Ironbound section of Newark.
I was about to say that. Right in the Ironbound. Absolutely.
And a lot of the individuals that started this urban agriculture, they don't look like us.
Absolutely.
Remember when we came up, we used to have the in every block they had where back in the day when Newark they would tear down a house, dig it up, and then they'd give it to the neighborhood and they'd make a community garden.
Yeah.
They don't even have that anymore.
Well, I'm gonna tell you something. They don't have it because the money men have come in. They want this land.
Yeah.
There's some land over in South Ward right now. There were a bunch of community groups. As a matter of fact, the Step Rights to Passage program were allotted two plots to grow food. Big business come and bought that whole area. I'm sorry, I take that back. It wasn't big business. They're going to expand University High School in that area, and so you don't even have that now. I don't hear them doing that down in Ironbound. I don't see them doing that. Or up here with grandpa dies, everyone argues over the house, or let it get taken for taxes. That's a problem. That's absolutely a problem. And the reality is that when someone comes with a cultural reference, or someone comes with that whole farmer's mentality that I just talked about, you got all of these naysayers. Oh, here you go with that. Or, oh my God, here you go. No, it's not here you go. No, it's not here you go. It's those things that help our parents and our grandparents survive. They help our grandparents, like my grandfather that came back from the war, came back from World War II, bought his land, and the place where he was living at on Wynyard Road in Georgetown, South Carolina, his house was the first house in the area that had an inside bathroom. Right? And they were proud of that, and they built on that. And fortunately for his children, most of them went and they bought their own houses. You know, my mother currently stays in the house that I went back and I negotiated something where I got the house that she stays in. Right? But my thing is to never sell. My thing is to never sell. And that's where we need to go.
And you know what's the sad part is with today's age where information is so more readily available, like our Google was the Dewey Decimal System. But if you have 50 Cent rapping about farming, you will have every brother and sister run into Lowe's and Home Depot buying a shovel, a hoe, and a bag of seeds.
Right. But the powers, but though, and I hate that term, the powers that be, because it doesn't put a face or a corporation name on that. So those that had power, those that are the money men, they wouldn't back 50 talking about farming. They wouldn't back 50 talking about generational wealth. You know what I mean? When you start, like, at one time, that was the way hip hop was going. I don't know if people remember, and it's funny that you brought up 50 Cent. I don't know if you remember when NWA first came out, the music wasn't really necessarily going in that order. So so NWA released an album that wasn't even sold yet. It wasn't even sold. They went #1 on the Billboard charts, knocking Mariah Carey, who had held the spot for weeks. So it was almost thrust upon us to have a mentality where it was this gun, like this whole gun culture thing. And it's ironic that I'm even talking about that, because I was looking at something earlier today and I'm like, wow, nothing has changed since NWA dropped Niggas with Attitudes.
Well,
Nothing has changed musically.
Let me give a quick plug. Fellow Newarker, Redman, he had released this new album, Muddy Waters 2. And I heard nothing but rave reviews. I'm going to purchase it. It stuck to the traditions of hip hop. So,
yeah, I saw an interview he did on Sway. I don't know, was it this morning or yesterday morning? But he did an interview on Sway. It was a really good interview. And one thing that to kind of switching gears a little bit, one thing that Redman talked about, also known as Reggie Noble, he talked about how he had stopped having sex for 2 years, and how he stopped smoking marijuana, and that he wanted to talk about life. He wanted to start talking about living and treating your body right. So, absolutely salute to Redman for switching. And mind you, even in that, people were still calling up to the show and talking about how he was their favorite rapper, like that he didn't lose a step. So God bless him. And I'm hoping that other MCs get onto that, because there's no way in the world that in the times of living in currently that hold on a second. The time wait a minute. Got some stuff. Okay. The times that we're living in right now, that we shouldn't be talking about generational wealth, but we shouldn't be talking about our health, but we shouldn't be talking about things that matter, things that add to the quality of our lives. The fact that we can talk about this right now, and then to kind of interconnect it to what's going on in the Sahel region with Ibrahim Traore, that should matter. I'm gonna take it a step further.
Burkina Faso, Nigeria.
Huh?
Burkina Faso, Niger.
Yeah, absolutely. Mali, Cameroon, which we know that Cameroon might be a little different situation, but they're making alliances with Sahel region countries. And so this thing is up in the air. It's up in the air. I still don't think it's too late for us. I don't think that it's too late for us to start making some changes, but it's going to fundamentally boil down to our culture and what we think and feel is important enough to survive for the next generation, meaning our children and their children. We have to get to a point where these things matter. We have to get to a point where we understand the importance of growing food, the importance of owning property and owning land, the importance of not having these imaginary beefs with people in our circles. We have to do something different, and we absolutely need to have some fundamental understanding of what's going on with national politics. First of all, local politics, like you talked about earlier, Lou. Local politics, knowing what's going on nationally and knowing what's going on internationally, and also having a desire to read something other than doom scrolling. We have to get to that point. We have to understand, what part do we play in this puzzle? What part do we play in this chess game? Are we going to keep on standing about on the side and looking at everybody else competing? The Southeast Indians have a whole Hindu temple in Robbinsville, New Jersey. It's the second largest temple on the planet. The second largest Hindu temple on the planet. Between 14 and 16,000 East Indians came and they volunteered to build this temple. They volunteered to build this temple. African people, what are you building? African people, what are you building?
Jibba Jabba said the Gen Z protests in Kenya was another movement that's setting the dominant society on notice.
Oh, it's going down. And Kenya is absolutely going down because Ruto, whatever legacy Ruto had as the president of Kenya, that went down the toilet. For you to agree to send soldiers from Kenya all the way from Africa to Haiti, really? That was a bad move. That was a bad move. And if he planned on leaving any legacy, that pretty much smeared that legacy. There's nowhere in the world that you have Kenyan troops go into a sovereign nation. Remember, when we just talked about the largest temple in the world, the largest Hindu temple in the world, the second largest headquarters the United States has, even the second or the third, is right in Haiti right now. Why? Why? Yes, Pittsburgh, I think, has one too. It's Pittsburgh, it's Los Angeles, I think Chicago, Florida, and they have one in Canada. So they're planting seeds like a farmer. They're planting seeds. We need to take all of the embarrassment of wearing overalls, put them on, and move forward and start planning for the future. That's what we need to be. That's what we need to be. So that's it in a nutshell. I would say this, and especially to you, Lou, since you have you got young lions, you got young cubs. Make sure they learn 2, maybe even 3 languages. Hell, they might even want to learn Mandarin. You might want to put them in a situation where they learn Mandarin. This is crucial. It's crucial. We have to get to a point where we have to know that life is a little more than doom scrolling on Instagram and Facebook. And listen, it's great that you have other platforms coming out that are a little more friendly, like Blue Sky and a fan base. But even in that, we need to find ways to make reading a little more important than going up and down the screens on our phones or on our computer, laptops, or desktops. Something has to be.
For sure.
Yeah, something has to be.
Because I was reading you when we were discussing when you had put on your Facebook. Do you want to talk more about Africa or the China situation?
Yeah, I'll talk about that. Yeah, I'll talk about that a little more. There's an organization. First of all, let's go back in time. Let's go back in the time. A lot of this got started, and you probably remember this, Lou, when I used to have my podcast. I called this 5 years ago.
You actually did.
Dr. Afrikan Echoes, who is the head of an organization called the Afrikan Diaspora, something, ADDI. That's the name of the organization that she has now, that she had just started. Matter of fact, it just started a couple of years ago. And I had the chance to interview her when she came here to Hillside. She's from Texas. She's a doctor, medical doctor. And she talked about how the French had been taking advantage of African countries and robbing them blind. And that's when the United States removed her from being an ambassador to Zimbabwe, which is where she's from. But she went back, brother. And not only did she go back, she talked about the connections that African Americans should have with those in Africa. There's a need for us to understand the importance of creating some types of some solidarity amongst us. Ibrahim Traore had already reached out. He reached out and said, listen, you guys can come back here and we can grow together. Because at the end of the day, everybody else is doubling up. Everybody else is doubling up. They understand the importance. Listen, Vivek Ramaswamy, he's saying that he's looking to have more people who are technologically advanced to come and work here. But that's nothing but dog whistle to those that belong to his group. He's trying to get more people like him into the country. That's what he's trying to do, right? And can you blame him? No, not necessarily. But other American citizens should be able to pay attention to that, and especially African Americans, because it's bad enough that we're being kept out of all the technological advances, whether it's our fault or not. For the most part, if it is our fault, then we need to get on the good foot. But if it's not our fault, we need to pay more attention. We need to pay more attention to what is our place in this whole grand scheme of things. Will we be in existence in the next 30, 40, 50 years? Will we even exist? Or are we going to be in a situation where our children are going to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and do like they did in Blade. Remember in Blade where humans would sell themselves to the night walkers?
Yeah.
Is that where we're going? Or are we going to get up off our knees? Are we going to get up off our knees and say, hey, you know what? The buck stops here. Let's get a plan. Let's get a plan, and let's start with our children. God willing, I'm able to teach my children, or at least start them off with at least 3 languages, and that they're properly prepared to know how to play chess and mancala. That they understand African culture. That they understand the grand chessboard. That they understand that there are different groups in this country. That there are different groups on the planet. And that they all huddle up with their own groups. That's what we have to get. We have to get to a point where we understand that we are in competition. We're in competition. We're at the bottom of all areas of human development. We're at the bottom of the 5 major levels of human development. And at some point, we got to stop. We got to drop our anchor. And we have to prepare like the farmer. So that's it in a nutshell. I hope I didn't give too much. I hope I didn't give less than people would expect it.
No. This I've been on you for months.
Yes,
and
we're
gonna get your YouTube channel set up.
Absolutely.
And we're definitely going to get your Patreon set up.
Yes, absolutely. Now, let me ask you, is this recorded, Lou? Is this program recorded?
Yeah, this is live. Yeah, and it's going to stay in the catalog.
Beautiful, beautiful, because this is something that I would want to share. And then we can kind of go back to, because, I'm used to this. I'm used to being in this environment. And I want to tell you, thank you for allowing me to come into this environment, man, because at the peak of what I was doing, it really took off. But then COVID came around. And now everybody's thriving. And the reality is that I don't want to thrive because I want to make a whole bunch of money, but I'm not adverse to it either. But being able to take this information and share it with the masses and maybe spark something where people can say, you know what? I'm going to teach my children another language. Hell, teach them Spanish. Get their minds going. Get them to understand that you are in complete competition with other people. You're in competition with other groups of people. And you need to get into this game. You need to not be intimidated by if someone says, hey, you ever considered being an engineer? You ever considered going to medical school? Elon Medical School in Cuba, one of the best medical schools in the country, is open for free to African people in the country and on the planet. You can literally go and get a free medical school education, and for the first year, they'll teach you Spanish.
Isn't that where Farrakhan sent his daughters to? His granddaughters?
Possibly. I'm more than sure that that's what happened. And I don't understand why people don't look at that and say, when their children are young, I could send my kids to get a $500,000 medical school education at one of the best medical schools on the planet, and they can come back to the United States and teach and speak fluent Spanish. I'm game. Why isn't that sexy to us? And so who knows what's going to happen once Cuba becomes a part of BRICS, whether that's going to still be available. We should have flooded that school with our children. At a conference with a couple of graduates from that school, two young folk, one young lady, her family, I think, was from Ghana, but she's a citizen of the United States, and another young man who was also from Ghana. They just finished. They're medical doctors in New York right now. These are opportunities that our people cannot afford to miss out on. They need to have a fundamental understanding of who they are. They need to also have a fundamental understanding of where they're at, and to understand that you need to do some things now, like the farmer, to benefit down the line. So I'll conclude by saying, Lou, thank you for this platform. We're going to set something up. I did this mostly without notes. I got a few notes, but you know, I was so used to doing it, and it feels good. But it also feels good to be able to share this information. Yes, it shouldn't be. It should, Jibba Jab. I'm hoping I'm saying your name right. You're right. Our demise shouldn't be the answer to the Negro question. You're absolutely right. We have to create universes. Create new universes. We have to create new realities. We have to create new ways of looking at the world and understanding that these things do not end with us. They end with generations upon generations upon generations. And they can look back, right? They can look back and say, you know what? May the ancestors be pleased once we return to the earth. But we live for the next generation. We live for the next generation so that the next generation can move forward and be where the Chinese are at. When the Chinese believe that their entire existence, 58% of them are Han Chinese, and they're moving forward as a civilization state, that says a lot.
And you know what's so funny about China, Ali?
Mm-hmm.
Because we're so brainwashed in white supremacy, and we see everything from a Western lens. A lot of people fail to realize that China is a very ancient civilization, and the whole world, except for Africa, used to go to China to trade centuries ago.
Absolutely.
But a lot of us, we look at, we see China as, like one big sweatshop.
Listen, they're doing it right now. It's an individual. What is his name? Junius. You know what? I'll put it in the chat. I'll come back and I'll come to this. But it's a guy. He's a white dude. He lives in China. He goes back from the United States to China. And brother, you got to see some of the innovations they have. Some of the innovations that are going on in China right now, and they get it and they understand. And the reality is that the United States, or those who are in control in the United States, they believe, right? They believe they're going to be able to do this by themselves, and that they're going to be able to stop one of the number one innovators, if not the number one innovator in this country, from participating in that process. Africans here in the United States have always been a part of that innovation in this country. So you think you're going to be able to just say, oh, okay, you know what? We're not going to deal with y'all anymore. We're going to bring some folk in. Nah, it don't work that way. It don't work that way.
Oh, I pause for 1 second. I got to give you your flowers. Do you remember, I think it was last year when you had stopped by at my job and you were talking about with the sneakers, how I think it was a year or two ago where we were talking about sneakers and everything. And you know how we're being, as we get older, we be very frugal with our money. And you was talking about from Stubbing to 3, they produce the real sneakers. And then when they close down, they make the so-called bootlegs. Was the actual sneakers.
Right.
There was a video on YouTube Shorts talking about it 2 days ago. And I wanted to send it
to you. Brother, listen. This comes from just constantly reading, constantly keeping up with what's going on. But a lot of these things, God willing, when I get this Patreon set up, I'll be able to do some things that I want to leave to my children and leave to other people's children in our group, to let them know that, hey, listen, the world depends on you. So we got to put that responsibility on them while also simultaneously training them to be the best. Not training them to be a running back for the Pittsburgh Steelers, not training them to be a running back for the Houston Oilers or Houston Oilers, the Houston Titans, or playing basketball for the Texans. My bad. Getting to that point, we got to get away from preparing our children as lambs to the slaughter, getting CTE and all kind of foolishness. We have to prepare them to say, right. We have to prepare them to say, you know what, you're gonna be in a career that's going to be handed down from generation to generations. You know, our major corporation, Wiggums, will be buried the dead. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that because they got a tight ship they're running over there, but it has to be Churchman, Wiggums, Cotton. You know what I mean?
Harry's.
Well, listen, my other meeting is coming up, Lou. They're calling me right now. But listen, we're gonna talk.
All right.
I'm gonna sign out and thank you, brother, and we'll talk.
Most definitely, brother. Peace. I wanted it to go longer than expected, but he has a meeting with the NAACP. So if anybody want to come up, if not, I'll shut it down. If anybody want to chop it up for next few minutes, let me know. Well, I guess I'm gonna be shutting this down. See us later on tonight. Hey, Bay, is it gonna be 9:00 with the with me, you, and Charles? Hey, Bay. Okay. 9:00. Me, Charles Faulkner, and Brace Villainy will be doing a dual cast stream talking about what's happening. Give us your thoughts now. All right, take it easy, Jibba Jabba. Oh, that was my boy Ali I was telling you about. I'm gonna hook him up with a YouTube channel. He used to do the thing on internet radio. He was the one from Afrikan Echoes. I didn't know that he was having another engagement today. I was hoping to have him longer. Hopefully, you would got on and chopped it up, especially with from the same circles with the conscious community. But I'm about to eat and get ready for 9:00. Hold on. Let's see. I will see you guys later. Thank you for listening, and I'm out.